I'm Paul Woodruffe. I'm a visual artist. I had my first exhibition in Auckland in 1980. My father was a graphic designer. My grandfather was a designer. My grandmother was an artist. Basically, if you want to rebel in my family, you do accountancy or law. I think I've always been interested in storytelling, but not a well fleshed out story like you'd read in a book, but more propositions and provocations. But I am interested in the nature of people and the fact that the world is a very mysterious and wonderful place. I like my work to be experience-based. I like to provide people with an experience when they look at the work. If I had the money and the time, I could take one of my paintings and make a short film from it. So it has all the ingredients of a story, but it's all encapsulated in a single still image. So I like the fact when people look at it, every person that looks at one painting will get something different from it. It'll tell them a different story. I've always had a style that's come naturally to me, and I've never sort of gone down a path of doing anything differently. I've never wanted to play to the audience or play to current styles. I mean, I came out to New Zealand as a boy 50 years ago. I was born in England. I like English painting. But I live in Auckland in the South Pacific, and I love the design and the geometry of Polynesian, Maori and Polynesian design. And I do like Asian, Japanese, particularly Japanese art. So what I do is I make sure that I open myself up to these influences. So I keep my roots, which is a sort of a fundamentally English aesthetic, but I absorb these influences from Maori, Polynesian and Asian art. After almost 40 years, I can now look back on my practice and say, okay, there were these seasons. When I first started showing work, it was in acrylic. They were very surrealist, very crisp. Obviously, it was all about the very De Chirico influenced, Magritte influenced, very hard-edged acrylic work. Surrealism is a little bit like punk rock. It says, well, you don't have to be an amazing painter, technical, or maker, but you can share your ideas with the world, and you can do it really easily and really simply with a pair of scissors and some magazines if you want, And I like that. I like that sort of punk aesthetic, and surrealism does that to me, And I like the way that the surrealists used imagery to try and to challenge the way people think about the world. And then I started to experiment with folded paper and some small sculpture, and I started using oils, and I started loosening up a little bit. And then there was another phase where I was looking at some iconic European paintings like Arnold Böcklin. I did 2 paintings based on the famous painting, The Galloping Cavalier, a guy on a horse, except I used a quad bike. And then about 4 years ago, I did a trip to Italy and went to Pompeii for the first time. And it was like someone hit me over the head with a rubber mallet. It was like, wow, Roman art. How can I live in the South Pacific and paint like these guys and be relevant? So for the last few years, I think I'm doing my best work. In a funny kind of way, I think all those other phases that I went through were all so that I could paint like I do now, in a way.